Porsche head into Laguna Seca with their perfect season intact. Can BMW be the ones to end their run? The GTD Pro cars are back on track. Who will step up in that very tight championship race? And the LMP2 cars aren't on the grid this weekend. How will that affect the racing? That and more as I take you through 5 storylines to watch in this year's TireRack.com Monterey Sports Car Championship. In 2023, heading into this Laguna Seca round, BMW and their new M Hybrid V8 had led just 9 laps to that point in the season. In 2024, BMW had taken a step forward and they had led 65 laps heading into this round. This year, they've taken yet another big step forward. They've led 120 laps so far and have been sitting on pole position for all 3 races. It's been a huge step forward for BMW in 2025, but there's still a big elephant in the room, and they haven't been able to convert any of those pole positions into a win. Sure, the team has led 120 laps, and they've been running well in every race so far. Not to mention that the 24 entry is sitting in 3rd in the points, only behind the 2 Porsches. But the big thing that they haven't been able to do so far is lock down that first win of the season. I've said it a few times both here and over on the Rain Race podcast, but in the 3rd year of a program, the expectation really needs to be taking that next step from kind of occasionally competing for wins to consistently competing for wins and being a real factor in the championship. BMW are now in their 3rd season of Imsa competition, and I will absolutely hand it to them. They have done a great job of improving the pace behind that M Hybrid V8 and being regular contenders for race wins, especially this year. But the fact is, they've yet to convert one of those pole positions into a race win, and it's going to be critical for them to do so before Porsche gets too far ahead in the championship hunt. Laguna is going to be a huge round for BMW. The 2 previous races that they've competed here, it has not brought good results for them. They have a best finish of 5th at the track, and also consider some of these GTP classes were not exactly as large as they are today, and they also have 0 laps led here. 0 laps led and just a single top 5 finish. That is the hill that BMW is facing heading into this weekend. That's why I think this is a huge weekend for BMW to put in a good performance, show that they are true, legitimate championship threats, and that's why you should also be keeping a very close eye on them this weekend. For years, when the series would visit Laguna Seca, one of the big key talking points was tire wear. Laguna Seca was notorious for bad tire wear, with the previous surface behaving more like a cheese grater than a racetrack, and always making it something that we had to keep a close eye on. Back in 2023, the track was completely resurfaced, and this year's race represents the 2nd time that Imsa will visit the track since that resurfacing took place. Last year, a lot of the tire concerns that we previously experienced were gone, and the new grippy surface provided us with some great racing. But what remains to be seen is how that surface will continue to age. It's going on almost 2 full years now since the track was repaved, and that means 2 full years of baking in the California sun. Also, over time, a track will generally lose grip and become a rougher surface for tires as some of the tar and other additives that are between the stones in the aggregate wear down, exposing more of the stones and sort of creating that cheese grater effect that I alluded to earlier. Now, I'm not saying that after just 2 years since this track was paved that that's already going to be taking place and we're going to have that cheese grater effect showing up again. No, absolutely not. These things usually happen over time, but what's going to be interesting to watch with this track in general is how some of the environmental factors, like the California sun baking down on it for many days of the year, could play into that track aging process. What I think that's ultimately going to do is bring the tire wear discussion back into this race a little bit sooner rather than later, and it's something that we could see play a role this weekend. After all, I don't think our discussions are going to be like what they were at Long Beach. Is it going to be a no-tire strategy, a 2-tire strategy? I think we're going to see a lot of cars doing 4-tire changes on their pit stops, but definitely keep an eye out for how tire wear, or the lack thereof, might come into play in this weekend's race. GTD Pro returns to the grid at Laguna Seca, and with it, they bring an extremely tight championship battle. The top 5 are separated by just 39 points, with the number 65 Ford Multimatic Motorsports Mustang leading the way with 653 points. The AO Racing Porsche is in second, the number 1 Paul Miller Racing BMW in third. The 64 Ford Mustang is in fourth, with the number 3 Corvette Racing by Pratt Miller Motorsports Corvette rounding out the top 5, 39 points behind the leading Ford. It's an extremely tight battle in GTD Pro, and one of the things that really sticks out to me here is kind of that established versus new car narrative that we see in the top 5. On one hand, you have Porsche, who have won at Laguna Seca in one of the GTD classes each of the past 2 years, and they would be that established car on the grid. And then you have some of the newer cars from Ford and Corvette that do have a race under their belt here from last year, but experienced very mixed results. And then finally, you have the brand new Evo spec BMW M4 GT3, who have seen success with the first generation of the M4 at Laguna Seca, and they're also off to a fantastic start to the season. The one that I'm keeping a very close eye on this weekend, though, is Ford. I think this is a big weekend for Ford to prove that they are legitimate championship contenders. Last year, their GTD Pro entries finished at the very bottom of the class, 1 lap down each, and showing no pace throughout the entire weekend. The car was largely uncompetitive. This year, and I guess the final couple of races of 2024, have seen Ford turn a major corner though. The team is showing solid, if not great pace everywhere they're going, and they finished first and third at the Rolex 24 and followed that up with a solid run at Sebring. But now we're heading to a couple of tracks that were disasters for Ford last year. Laguna Seca, as I mentioned, where they finished last and second last in class, and Detroit, which was equally as big of a disaster for them. These next 2 races are going to be huge for Ford to prove that they're past all of the growing pains that they experienced last year, and indeed are legitimate threats for the GTD Pro Championship. So, keep a close eye on them this weekend. You should also be keeping a close eye on your inbox later this week, as I send out a bonus storyline to follow in this year's Laguna Seca race to all of the S's email newsletter subscribers. You can subscribe to that for absolutely free at offinthes's.com. Click that first link in the description. For the second straight year, there will be no LMP2 cars present at Laguna Seca. Starting with the 2024 season, Imsa made the difficult choice to exclude the LMP2s from the Laguna Seca round while having the other 3 classes present. It was a decision that, while maybe not a particularly popular one, was one that needed to be made at the time. You see, in 2023, the last time all 4 classes were present at Laguna Seca, there were only 9 GTPs, 5 GTD Pro cars, and 16 GTDs. Fast forward to 2025, and we've seen more growth. This year, there will be 11 GTP cars, 10 GTD Pro cars, and 15 GTDs. The GTP and GTD classes have increased in size over the last couple of years, and notably with Laguna Seca only featuring about 42 pit stalls, means it's not reasonable to also be able to accommodate all of the LMP2 class competitors. Now, instead of the LMP2 cars heading to Laguna Seca, they will instead be a headliner at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park round later this year. But really, this lack of race at Laguna Seca for LMP2 presents another kind of challenge. It's a long break between races for them. Since they're not on the grid this weekend, it means that they are going from Sebring, which took place in mid-March, and they will have no race until Watkins Glen in mid to late June. This is something that Imsa was reportedly working with the teams to try and resolve for the upcoming seasons, but as of now, there's been no major changes to the schedule that have been announced yet. So, what does the lack of LMP2 cars mean for us in terms of the on-track racing that we're going to see? Well, with the GTPs being the only prototype class present, it means that navigating any of the slower class cars will be a bit easier for them. While there will be a similar number of cars as we've seen here in previous years, including back to when the LMP2s were on the grid, with there being fewer prototypes, it means that navigating around the slower GT traffic for the GTP cars will be much easier. I also think that there's going to be positives here for the GT classes as well, as they don't have to deal with as much prototype traffic. It means that their inter-class battles should be disrupted less frequently, and hopefully it's going to lead to some great racing there as well. It was also just one season of it, but last year we only saw one full course yellow in the 2 hour and 40 minute race, so hopefully there's a bit of a correlation there with easier to navigate around traffic, and fewer full course yellows. We'll have to tune in this weekend to see if that plays out. I think there's only one way to describe Porsche's Imsa run so far this year, and that's dominant. Coming into Laguna Seca, they've won all 3 races, have had both cars on the podium in all 3 races, including 1-2 finishes in the past 2 races. They've led a combined 738 laps. The season has only been 1,209 laps total, so Porsche's led 61% of them. That's wild. And it's gonna come as no surprise that after that list of accolades, they are also first and second in the championship standings. But all insane streaks come to an end, and I think they're going to be in tough this weekend at Laguna Seca. Sure, Porsche have been successful at this track before, picking up a win and a 3rd place finish in 2024 to add on to their 2nd place finish that they picked up in 2023. But let's not forget about how good Cadillac have been here as well. They finished 1st and 3rd here in 2023, and the 31 car added on a 2nd place finish last year. Now, considering how the season has started for Cadillac, you better believe they're going to be hungry to put a good result on the board this weekend. It's actually wild to think that Cadillac doesn't have a podium yet this season. In fact, they're the only full season GTP manufacturer without one. We also can't forget about Acura. They've shown some strong pace so far this season, and they've also finished 4th here in both times that they visited. Of course, we talked about them earlier, but you can't forget about BMW either. Sure, it isn't a track that they've had a ton of success at, but with the sheer pace and the big step forward that that program has taken this year, you have to think that they're going to be in the mix. I just think that despite the dominance that we've seen from Porsche so far this season, we can't just assume that they're going to walk all over everyone at Laguna Seca. Although there is one Porsche that we know is going to be starting at the front of the grid, I guess, on this weekend's race. As Porsche have reached an agreement to become the official car of WeatherTech Laguna Seca, and as a result, they are going to be the pace car for this season. They're also launching a Porsche driving center at the track starting in 2026. So yes, there are plenty of storylines to keep an eye out in this weekend's race. But there were also tons of big news stories that just came out last month in April. So before you get settled in for this weekend's race, make sure you check out this video that recaps all of the big Imsa news stories from April. Huge shout out to all of the channel supporters. If you too want to support the show, you can head to patreon.com/offintheS's or click that join button below. Once again, thanks for tuning in. I hope everyone has a great race weekend and doesn't go off in the S's.